Good evening and welcome to the DebtCircle Sundown brief for the 22nd of June 2026. I'm Leela, bringing you today's complete fixed income and debt market roundup. Let's begin with the top 5 highest yield listed corporate bond trades of the day. Topaz 04 2026 traded at a yield of 18.35% with a trade value of 12 lakh rupees. Unifin's Capital India Limited traded at a yield of 17.25% with a trade value of 50 lakh rupees. Best Capital Services Limited traded at a yield of 15.98% with a trade value of 113.50 lakh rupees. Akara Capital Advisors Private Limited traded at a yield of 15.90% with a trade value of 50 lakh rupees. Regency FinCorp Limited traded at a yield of 15.50% with a trade value of 12 lakh rupees. Moving to the top 5 highest yield unlisted corporate bond transactions. Infifresh Foods Limited traded at a yield of 17.00% with a trade value of 400 lakh rupees. FDPL Finance Private Limited traded at a yield of 16.00% with a trade value of 16 lakh rupees. Vadraj Cement Limited traded at a yield of 14.7625% with a trade value of 50 lakh rupees. Apex Homes Private Limited traded at a yield of 14.00% with a trade value of 3,534.27 lakh rupees. Nuvama Wealth Finance Limited traded at a yield of 9.00% with a trade value of 30 lakh rupees. Now let's look at mutual fund debt market activity. Gross purchases stood at 30,421.02 crore rupees. Gross sales came in at 33,198.04 crore rupees. Net investment was negative 2,777.02 crore rupees. Month-to-date net investment for June stood at negative 85,854.250 crore rupees. Turning to foreign portfolio investor activity in the debt market. Under the general limit category, gross purchases were 9,442.26 crore rupees. Under the voluntary retention route or VRR, gross purchases were 5.04 crore rupees. Under the fully accessible route or FAR, gross purchases were 607.83 crore rupees. Gross sales under the general limit were 2,573.83 crore rupees. Gross sales under VRR were 26.06 crore rupees. Gross sales under FAR were 115.40 crore rupees. Net investment under the general limit was 6,868.43 crore rupees. Net investment under VRR was negative 21.02 crore rupees. Net investment under FAR was 492.43 crore rupees. For June month to date, net investment under the general limit stood at 14,972.26 crore rupees. Under VRR, month to date net investment stood at 4,007.30 crore rupees. Under FAR, month to date net investment stood at 19,272.89 crore rupees. For calendar year 2026 year to date, net investment under the general limit stood at 11,577 crore rupees. Under VRR, year-to-date net investment stood at 1,055 crore rupees. Under FAR, year-to-date net investment stood at 33,886 crore rupees. Let's move to money market rates. The call rate closed at 5.33%. Tri-party repo or T-repo stood at 5.29%. Basket repo stood at 5.30%. Special repo stood at 5.19%. Now for India government bond yields. The 1-year government bond yield stood at 5.75%. The 3-year yield stood at 6.26%. The 5-year yield stood at 6.50%. The 7-year yield stood at 6.71%. The 9-year yield stood at 6.88%. The 10-year yield stood at 6.85%. The 15-year yield stood at 7.16%. The 30-year yield stood at 7.48%. Moving to Treasury bill yields. The 91-day Treasury bill yield stood at 5.26%. The 182-day Treasury bill yield stood at 5.50%. The 364-day Treasury bill yield stood at 5.79%. Let's review liquidity indicators. Net liquidity injected stood at negative 1,43,642 crore rupees. Standing Deposit Facility or SDF stood at 1,44,129 crore rupees. Marginal Standing Facility or MSF stood at 487 crore rupees. Now for MIBOR OIS rates. The 1-year rate stood at 5.87%, the 2-year rate stood at 6.05%, the 3-year rate stood at 6.16%, the 5-year rate stood at 6.33%. Moving to modified MIFOR rates. The 2-year modified MIFOR stood at 6.96%, the 3-year modified MIFOR stood at 6.96%. The 4-year modified MIFOR stood at 7.07%. The 5-year modified MIFOR stood at 7.21%. Let's look at currency markets. The US dollar closed at 94.62 rupees against the Indian rupee, compared with 94.37 previously. The euro closed at 108.37 rupees, compared with 108.22 previously. The British pound closed at 125.32 rupees, compared with 124.87 previously. The Japanese yen closed at 0.59 rupees, unchanged from 0.59 previously. The Chinese yuan closed at 13.94 rupees, unchanged from 13.94 previously. Turning to commodities and benchmark indices. 24-karat gold of 99.9 purity closed at 14,651 rupees per 10 grams, compared with 14,608 rupees previously. Silver closed at 2,500 rupees per 10 grams, unchanged from 2,500 rupees previously. Crude oil closed at $78.54 per barrel, compared with $80.38 previously. The Sensex closed at 77,094.07, compared with 76,802.90 previously. The Nifty closed at 24,102.90, compared with 24,013.10 previously. Finally, let's review today's primary corporate bond issuances in India. Regency Fincorp Limited issued 15 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 31 months and a coupon of 13.00%. The issue carries a BBB- rating from Infomerix Valuation and Rating Private Limited. Mahindra Rural Housing Finance Limited issued 400 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 61 months and a coupon of 8.05%. The issue is rated AAA by Care Ratings Limited and AAA by CRISIL Ratings Limited. SMFG India Credit Company Limited issued 485 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 37 months and a coupon of 8.15%. The issue is rated AAA by Care Ratings Limited and AAA by CRISIL Ratings Limited. RAK Ceramics India Private Limited issued 200 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 37 months and a coupon of 10.60%. The issue is rated single A by ICRA Limited. 361 Prime Limited issued 100 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 37 months and a coupon of 9.15%. The issue is rated AA by ICRA Limited. Knowledge Realty Trust issued 600 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 33 months and a coupon of 7.54%. The issue is rated AAA by CRISIL Ratings Limited and AAA by ICRA Limited. Bajaj Auto Credit Limited issued 500 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 37 months and a coupon of 8.10%. The issue is rated AAA by ICRA Limited. Alpha Alternatives Financial Services Private Limited issued 236 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 67 months. The coupon was not disclosed. The issue carries a PPM LDA- rating from Care Ratings Limited. Monedo Financial Services Private Limited issued 55 crore rupees of bonds with a tenure of 13 months and a coupon of 13.70%. The issue is rated BBB- by India Rating and Research Private Limited. That concludes the DebtCircle Sundown brief for the 22nd of June 2026. Thank you for watching. I'm Leela, and we'll see you again tomorrow with another complete update from India's debt and fixed income markets.